Hello and welcome to this video on the setting found in Hamlet, and of course we're talking about the castle at Elsinore, which is where the vast majority, in fact the entire play, takes place. And this is a common question in the Leaving Cert Ordinary Level English Paper 2, and just to show you, we'll go into this tab, our introduction tab, and just get a look at some of the questions that have come up in the past. So here's our little section on setting here. And last time that Hamlet was examined, which was in 2017, there was a question on set design. So they asked you specifically to design the set for the scene when Hamlet confronts Gertrude, which is of course one of our key moment scenes. It also, back in 2011, there was a question on whether Elsinore was a frightening or an exciting place to live. And then back in 2002, way back in 2002, there was a question on if you were a young servant, write a letter in which you describe Elsinore and the events there. So knowing the setting of where the play takes place is quite important to understanding the plot. Okay, let's go back into our setting page and let's get just some things out of the way as to where exactly is Elsinore, because Elsinore is a real place. It's a real place in Denmark. It still exists, and it's located in a very strategic place. So we'll get a zoom in a second, but we all know here, of course, that's where we are in England, and Denmark is here. It's above Germany. It's very much in the center of Europe. This is Europe, and Denmark was in the center of Europe, and it had access all around it to the sea, which meant it was a very important trading location for Europe, and it had contacts throughout Europe because of its closeness to both London and of course to the other side, which is Russia, to the centers of European culture such as Paris, Berlin, and up into Oslo and Stockholm. It was very much a central location, Denmark. Now let's specifically look at where in Denmark this castle was. So if we just zoom in a little bit, Denmark, and we're beginning to see this red little dot is where Elsinore is, so we'll zoom in again, and this is Denmark, and we've zoomed right in. Elsinore would have been in this corner here. And over here, you have Sweden. Up here above, you have got Norway. Norway is just up there. And this location for the castle is very, very strategic because it was the main route that Swedish ships had to take, that Norwegian ships had to take, if they wanted to travel to the rest of Europe. So let's just get a look at that again on this zoomed out picture. Here is Elsinore, here is Norway, here is Sweden. This route along the coast and through that strait, which is where the castle is located, was a very, very strategic location. So in other words, that's why the King of Denmark built his castle there. Elsinore was not some backwater castle. It was a powerful place to be. It was the center, really, of Denmark, politically. Now, the castle still exists. It still stands. You can visit it if you want. This is the actual castle, the real castle, where this play is set. And you can see, just by looking at it, that this is not exactly Barberstown Castle, is it? This is a huge castle with many, many different rooms, many, many different stories, huge battlements and protective structures all around. This was a powerful place to be. Now, let's look at this document that I've pasted in here that you can read as well, just to go over it, to look at the setting. Elsinore is the English spelling of Helsingør. That's what the Danish people call it. A town on the eastern coast of Denmark. In Shakespeare's lifetime, Helsingør was an important military location, the stronghold from which the King of Denmark controlled a narrow stretch of sea. A fortress had stood in the town since the Middle Ages, and between 1574 and 15 blah blah blah, the Frederick II of Denmark rebuilt the fortress as a magnificent castle. So it's a magnificent castle, Elsinore. It's a beautiful place. Very, very big and awe-inspiring. Will Kemp, a member of Shakespeare's acting company, visited the castle at Elsinore to perform for King Frederick, who was an enthusiastic patron of theatre. So Shakespeare likely knew where the town was and what its castle was like. There's no evidence Shakespeare ever actually visited the castle himself, but this guy, a friend of his that acted for him, did, and he told him about it, and that's why he set it there. Now, keep in mind the maps that I showed you a moment ago. There was a constant threat of invasion from neighbouring countries. Norway would have loved that location, would have loved to have it itself, as would Sweden, and even indeed would Germany or any of those Baltic countries along that coast. They would have loved that castle for themselves. So there was always a threat of invasion, and indeed that is in the play. Fortinbras is threatening invasion. And how would that make anybody feel that lived there, living under that cloud, that danger of being invaded? The threat of invasion contributes to Hamlet's mood of anxious uncertainty. So that's an important point to make. If you were asked in your Leaving Cert to describe Elsinore, Elsinore, because of its location, was not a nice place to live. It was very easy to go a little bit cuckoo in Elsinore. What else can we say about it? It was the largest castle of its kind. It was a cultural centre. People travelled there from all over Europe. You saw on the map a moment ago I drew arrows. That's how central Elsinore was in Europe. It was within the same distance to Paris as it was to Berlin, as it was to Poland, as it was to London, Oslo, Stockholm. People came there from all around. So it really was a place that people, gained different knowledge and got a different viewpoint on the world. I'm going to skip to this last page because it's probably the most important, most relevant for your Leaving Cert. The whole play takes place inside Elsinore, every bit of it, and that's unusual for a Shakespeare play. I can't think of any other play that Shakespeare wrote. Definitely not any of the tragedies. I can't think of any of them in which the entire play is set in one single location. There's usually a street, there's usually even different cities, different towns depicted on the stage. Not in Hamlet. The entire play takes place in this castle, and there's a reason for that. He does that on purpose. It's to create that sense of being trapped that Hamlet feels, trapped by his conscience, trapped by his duty to his dead father, trapped by the betrayal that's been visited upon him by his mam and his stepdad. He's trapped. So Shakespeare sets it in one location for that reason. What else can we say about the physical building? It has lots of private spaces, and these come in very handy because it enables characters to talk out loud, to think out loud, to say soliloquies, as we call them. They think they're doing so privately, but of course many of these soliloquies are being listened in on. So even though there's private spaces such as Ophelia's closet or Gertrude's closet or Claudius's private chapel, they're not really private. Everything is being watched in this castle. Everything is being listened to. Everything is public. There's very little privacy. These private spaces reflect the play's obsession with how people behave when they are not performing for other people. At the same time, the character's privacy is often disturbed or spied upon. Polonius spies on Hamlet while he talks to Ophelia. Hamlet invades Ophelia's closet, and he spies on Claudius while he prays. When Hamlet invades Gertrude's closet, Polonius is spying on them both. All this spying contributes to the atmosphere of uncertainty and mistrust. So, in general, Elsinore is not a nice place to live. It's filled with corruption, risk, and a lack of privacy. People die there. We better put that in, shouldn't we? People die, people are murdered. There are several. There's a suicide from Ophelia, and there's also a suicide risk from Hamlet. It's a dark place. It's a dark place. Okay. Oh, that would be. Those notes are very adequate to help you answer some questions. I wrote down some other things along the margins. Maybe you could look at those in your own time. They're linked to the sections that are across from them. And in general, that's the setting of the play. It's not a very nice place to live.